This is not a story born from internet forums or Reddit threads. This is a documented case investigated by Ed and Lorraine Warren, the same paranormal researchers who tackled the Amityville house in Annabelle. In the sleepy town of West Pittston, Pennsylvania, from 1974 to 1987, a family endured over a decade of torment inside a duplex that should never have been occupied. Growling from empty rooms. Shadow figures in the hallway. Assaults in the night. They were the Smurls, and this is their story. Based on interviews, case files, and the book, The Haunted by Robert Curran, you're about to hear a chilling, true tale of infestation, oppression, and something worse. Let's start the story. The silent suffering of the Smurl family. Viewer discretion is advised. In 1973, Jack and Janet Smurl, a devout Catholic couple with 4 young daughters, decided to move into a more spacious home in West Pittston, Pennsylvania. The duplex, built in the 1890s, seemed perfect. Jack's parents would live in one half. Jack, Janet, and the kids would occupy the other. The house, though old, had character. High ceilings, vintage fixtures, and the charm of another era. Jack, a technician for Topps Chewing Gum, saw the move as an upgrade. But almost immediately things felt off. The air was stale. Lights flickered no matter how many times Jack replaced the bulbs. And during their first week, Janet swore she heard whispering from the walls. But it wasn't until the smell came that things turned. It began in the kitchen, the overwhelming stench of rotting flesh and human waste, rising from nowhere. Plumbers were called. Ducts checked. Nothing. Then the smell would disappear just as suddenly as it came, sometimes for days, only to return in a different room. The Warrens would later write that demonic entities often announced themselves through foul odors, putrid, sulfuric scents linked to the decay of spirit and body. Jack tried to stay logical. Old houses have plumbing issues, he said. But Janet didn't buy it. Especially not after the first voice. One night, Janet heard her name, softly like a murmur, from the hallway. Thinking it was one of the girls, she stepped into the corridor only to find it empty. The temperature dropped, and she noticed her breath had turned visible. Then came the sound of growling from the bathroom. She ran to Jack, but when he checked, there was nothing. 1975. The events escalated. Cabinets slammed shut in the middle of the night. Water faucets turned on full blast, then off. Toilets flushed on their own. The television flickered to static, even when unplugged. Their dog, Simon, would bark and snarl at corners of the room, tail between his legs, sometimes refusing to enter certain hallways. Then one night he was thrown across the room, his body hitting the wall with a sickening thud. He survived but limped for weeks. Janet was doing laundry when she felt ice-cold hands grip her shoulders. She turned, no one there. But bruises formed within hours. Later, Jack described being sexually assaulted by an unseen entity, a horrifying violation he struggled to even explain. He described the presence as huge, heavy, and hateful. "I wasn't dreaming," he said in an interview. "I was awake and it held me down." The Smurls began telling close friends and family, who reacted with a mix of sympathy and skepticism. A priest blessed the home. The activity paused for days, but then returned with more aggression. One night, the girls screamed from their room. Janet and Jack burst in to find deep scratches on the walls and their youngest daughter curled in a ball, crying, "The shadow touched me." Neighbors also reported hearing screaming from the house when the family was out. One neighbor said she saw a figure watching from the upstairs window, even though no one was home. In 1985, after over a decade of torment, The Smurls reached out to Ed and Lorraine Warren, known for their work on other paranormal cases. Ed later said, "This wasn't just a haunting. It was a full-on demonic infestation." Lorraine, a clairvoyant, entered the home and immediately sensed an evil presence. "There is something here that wants to hurt this family," she whispered. She claimed to see dark figures hovering over the beds and heard an inhuman growl echoing from the attic. The Warrens brought in clergy for an exorcism. The ritual caused violent outbursts. Books flew off shelves, lights burst, and an unseen force slammed a priest to the floor. Despite their efforts, the haunting did not stop. Janet reported even more violent dreams, many involving her daughters being taken. One morning, they awoke to find crucifixes turned upside down, nailed to the walls. Jack's health deteriorated. Their dog refused to eat. Neighbors began to whisper. Word spread. Local news stations picked up the story. Reporters interviewed Jack and Janet, who came across as frightened but sincere. Some clergy defended them. Others called it hysteria or mass delusion. The family was ridiculed, but they refused to leave. "We can't afford another house," Janet told reporters. "And if we leave, what if it follows us?" One night in 1986, Janet was folding clothes when the room went cold, freezing. The door creaked open slowly and a shadow filled the doorway, tall and wide, its form rippling like smoke. Jack came running, but the entity vanished. That night, the family slept in the living room, all of them huddled together, the girls whispering prayers. Outside, every window reflected something different than what was inside. And just before midnight, they all heard it. Laughter. From upstairs. A laugh that did not belong to anyone in the house. Lock your doors, dim the lights. What you're about to hear is not fiction. The Smurl family's home became their prison. Now, the nightmare spreads. Jack's sleep becomes a battleground. The Warrens discover the land's brutal past, and something worse. Jack's sleep fractured into nightmares so vivid he awoke bruised and bloody. He spoke of being dragged through dark tunnels under the house, heartrending moans echoing from below. He awoke to claw marks across his chest, forcing him to sleep in the living room. Lorraine Warren stated this was a classic sign of psychic vampirism, where a malevolent spirit feeds from fear and the soul. At 2:13 a.m. one night, Janet awoke to find the bedroom door hammered open by an invisible force. A dense darkness seeped inside, pressing against her. In her shaking grasp, Jack's flashlight broken, but still flickering. She fainted. When she awoke, the house was silent, except for a laughter too deep to be human. Lorraine and Ed discovered the land once belonged to a sect of occult practitioners in the 1800s who dabbled in spirit-binding rituals. Reports referenced a missing child ritual, meant to tether spirits to the earth. Lorraine sensed a presence still chained below the basement slab. Ancient records in town archives mention a child's grave crushed beneath the foundation. The fears of their forebears seemed tied to a demon drawn from that grave. Objects kept rising mid-air, books, dinner plates, even a Bible snapped in two near Janet's hands. In the kitchen, a full kettle soared upward and smashed on the ceiling, leaving shards to rain down. The dog Simon once again was thrown, this time hard enough to break ribs. The Smurl daughters began having visions. One young girl, Rachel, spoke of seeing a dark hand pushing her sister. Another, Patty, claimed to stand in Aunt Grace's room and feel someone breathe in her ear, though she was home alone. Young Polly slept with bruises shaped like thumbprints, even when checked at dawn. These incidents weren't in Jack's nightmares. they came to them in daylight. In early 1986, the Warrens arranged another exorcism with a Catholic priest. This time it turned violent. The priest was pushed down the stairs by an invisible force. A heavy pot of holy water shattered without breaking nearby porcelain. A crucifix tore itself from the wall, revealing a rotting body-like stain beneath. They had to abandon the ritual, and the presence only grew angrier. Lorraine claimed the entity could mimic human voices, echoing family members' names to lure victims toward the basement. One evening, Janet heard Jack calling her. She followed his voice downstairs but found him asleep on the couch. The voice echoed from beneath the basement door with no keyhole visible. Odd counts: 13 tablespoons of flour scattered on the kitchen counter, 666 scratches etched onto the back of the couch, 23 newspapers torn to shreds and stacked. Police who later cataloged these items reported an obsessive numeric focus, reminiscent of cult symbolism. Jack and Ed uncovered a bricked-over cellar crawlspace. Inside were charred wooden planks and a small box covered in archaic symbols, the same as fortune-teller notes found in town archives describing souls bound to basement soil. Overhead, Lorraine heard the wall whisper, "Keep the child. Keep its name. It stays with us." Jack stumbled out in the pre-dawn light, hands bleeding, eyes haunted. "It's under the house now. We can't stay." They didn't leave immediately. The fear had become habit, the walls too oppressive, but the entity wasn't just in their home. It was everywhere they went. Once they realized the demon followed them even outside the house, the Smurls learned, some hauntings do not stay behind. They flee, only to discover the evil shifted its target. Public scrutiny, mental breakdowns, final exorcisms, and a family forced to reckon with a terror that never left. This is the harrowing conclusion of the silent suffering of the Smurl family. Despite months of ritual and prayer, the spiritual abuse persisted. Jack and Janet realized, even the home was no longer safe. So in late 1987, they abandoned their duplex on Chase Street and moved to a nearby home in Wilkes-Barre with hopes for escape. Yet the terror didn't stay in West Pittston. On their first night in the new house, the smell returned, furniture shook, and the eldest daughters claimed they heard voices calling out their names. The family concluded the demon had latched onto them, not just the house. Their story became national news in 1986 with coverage by the Associated Press, Wilkes-Barre Times Leader, and appearances on shows like Larry King Live and Entertainment Tonight. Crowds and film crews gathered at the old house. Vandals smashed windows. Police had to barricade the property to protect the family and journalists from frenzied attention. Still, even priests and skeptics were drawn in. Father Kara's actor Jason Miller visited in 1986 stating, "Something is going on," while skeptics like Paul Kurtz offered baseless explanations. The stress of constant scrutiny and torment led to Jack suffering fainting spells and memory loss. He'd previously undergone brain surgery for hydrocephalus in 1983, which might have influenced his perception. By 1988, Janet, Jack, and their 4 daughters spoke publicly, co-writing The Haunted with Robert Curran, a memoir of their ordeal. Critics slammed the book for sensationalism, but thousands found resonance in their struggle. In late 1988 or early 1989, a church-sanctioned exorcism by Reverend Joseph Adonisio reportedly broke the hold of the demonic entity. The foul smells, physical assaults, and voices ceased for nearly 3 months. Janet later recalled that occasional knocking and shadows persisted, but the oppressive, violent presence began to fade. In 1989, the Smurls sold the house. Subsequent tenants reported no haunting. Embattled but alive, the Smurls moved to Wilkes-Barre. Karen Smurl, one of the twin daughters, later became a paranormal investigator, helping others whose families felt abandoned by mainstream skeptics. Jack Smurl lived decades beyond the horror, passing away in 2017. He maintained that the entity never truly left, just retreated in silence. According to the Warrens, via NESPR records, the duplex housed 4 spirits: an elderly woman, a violent young girl, a man who died on the property, and a controlling demon. The demon had used the other spirits to harass the family and could shift locations between the twin units to avoid exorcism ritual. There were audio tapes documenting tabletop taps, unexplained knocks, and growls. A videotape reportedly captured a dark figure in the hallway on February 15, 1986. Yet skeptics question the evidence. No tapes were ever released, critics cited mental health potential, and the same address housed normal occupants the year after the Smurls left with no paranormal report. After the move and media attention, Jack increasingly exhibited stress-induced paranoia. He saw apparitions at work, felt watched, and spoke of his sense that the demon had taken residence in his soul, not his house. In the years that followed, he became quiet, ragged, haunted by nightmares that never ended. When interviewed later, he said, "Even today in daylight, I sometimes see it in the corner of my eye." AppalachiaBear.com. The Smurl family case raises unsettling questions. Can a spirit attach to flesh as well as stone? Does a haunted house lose its evil when abandoned, or simply spread it? Some skeptics write it off as delusion or marketing. But 8 members of this family lived it. They believe it, and they lived with it for years. Tonight's horror may be fiction, but their terror was all too real. This is Dark Horror Bytes. If you felt eyes watching when no one's around, maybe it's not just imagination. You may be watched.